Invincible just wrapped up its second season last week, so let's review. Now, I absolutely loved that first season of Invincible. The show as a whole was one of the biggest surprises of 2021, and so I waited patiently for season 2 and then come to find out that it was split into two parts either because of the strikes or they didn't have time to finish the animation. I don't know, I didn't really look into why it was split into two parts. I just knew we was going to get part 2 sooner or later. But what I love about the show Invincible is that for an animated superhero show, it still has some mature content in it. It got dark when it needed to get dark, it got bloody when it needed to get bloody, and at the same time, it still worked as a superhero show. Now, I love season 2, but not quite as much as the first season, but there is a lot happening in season 2 that elevates this show to the next level. I love how this show is basically a continuation from season 1, in which, after Mark pretty much had his whole world put upside down when he realized his dad is not who he thought he was, and then he up and left this planet, and so now Mark is in a different place, and he has to deal with the fallout of what happened between him and his dad, Omni-Man. And there's a lot happening this season that sets up the next season. But what I did dug about this first season is the structure in which the beginning of the first season, well, really the first episode, it sets up the main villain, and then the rest of the season, it's basically Mark just dealing with everything that happened in the first season, and then how it affects the rest of the Guardians, how it affects the world. But more importantly, it's not until the end of the season where I realized what this whole season was really about, and it's about Mark dealing with his inner demons and trying to prove to himself that he's not as bad as his father, and prove that he won't give in to his dangerous instincts like his father. And I love that they contrast that with the multiverse. And that's one thing that did kind of bring this show down a bit for me, because as much as this show does elevate the superhero genre, it is still a reflection on the current state of superhero movies, because most superhero movies nowadays are delving into the multiverse. And this show was no exception. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point The Boys delves into the multiverse. But unlike other superhero properties, I'd say the show Invincible, it uses the multiverse sparingly, because it's really just a background thing. It doesn't have anything to do with the overarching story. It's just there to pretty much serve as basically the basis of what Mark is going through on the show. Because in every other universe, Mark, he gives into his dangerous instincts and become evil like his dad. And so this is the only universe where Mark is really the good guy. And in doing so, he created a new villain, which is Angston Levy, I think that's his name. But anyways, he's voiced by Sterling K. Brown, and shout out to Sterling K. Brown, because on top of his Oscar nomination, and I already knew he was a good voice actor, but here he really shines. So I think, to me, he was the standout in terms of the voice acting. He really got a chance to play around and have fun in the recording booth, especially in that last episode. But I just love how the multiverse basically created him, and he basically got in contact with all the different versions of him, and in, of course, every other different universe, there's an evil Mark, and they all have something to do with him and how he becomes who he becomes, and so they all come fused, and so now he has access to other dimensions, but also he has the memories of all the other Angstons. For him being the main villain, we don't see him for much of the show because he's really not the point of this season. He's really there just to serve as character development for Mark, because he's the one that makes, in spoiler alert, but in that last episode, he basically fights him, and he's basically the one that makes Mark turn to his dangerous instincts, and that's where Mark, he's at a crossroads, because it's like he gave in, but for pure intentions, because he was about to threaten his family. But the fact that it still had to happen, it just puts Mark at a crossroads, and he needs some time to himself. But of course, I love how he's able to universe hop, and he goes to all these different dimensions, even outside of the Invincible universe. Like, he goes to a Spider-Man variant universe. They even make references how Spider-Man, he's had a lot of adventures in the multiverse, especially recently. And then he even goes to the DC universe where he meets Batman. We don't actually see Batman, but he takes a little jab at his name. I also like how we put more focus on Mark's mom, because she had the shocking revelation that Omni-Man, he said, like, I do love your mother, but as a pet, and you don't know what that's going to do to a woman, and how that basically changes her entire worldview and how it changes her entire relationship. And so she goes through a deep depression. She starts drinking. She almost kills herself. And then she's saddled up with this purple alien baby. I'll get more into him in a little bit. But I do like what they do with Mark's mom in this season. And shout out to Sandra Oh, who plays the voice of her. Stellar voice acting. But as for Omni-Man, his real name is Nolan, after what happened in season 1, he goes to a different planet and he finds himself and he starts a new family. But of course, the Viltrums, they find him, and so now he has to answer for his crimes. But Mark, he takes the baby back to Earth, and him and his mother adopt him. I even like how they did Mark's girlfriend on this season, played by Zazie Beetz, because she's trying her hardest to be with a superhero, but of course he has responsibilities and he has his own inner demons to deal with. So it's kind of like in Spider-Man 2, he's like, he takes on so much and he's dealing with so much on the inside that he just decided, like, this is not going to work out. And plus, I knew in the back of my mind that wasn't really going to work out. It was really going to be Mark and Eve, Adam Eve. I always thought that that's what the show was leaning more so towards it, because they have good chemistry, they have a good relationship, they are always there if they need a shoulder to cry on. And it's even more evident when the future version of Eve, she tells Mark to basically tell present Eve that he loves her before it's too late. And I like that they didn't even go the whole 9 with their relationship. At the end of the season, it's just the two of them, and he doesn't even tell her. They leave that up to the remaining seasons. And as for the other Guardians, I like where they took them, and they're a lot more fun this season. Overall, I just like how this season basically ended on a sour note. We don't know what's going to happen with Mark going forward and how he's going to deal with his demons. We don't know how the relationship between him and Eve is going to play out. We don't know what's going to happen with Omni-Man, since he is in the custody of the Viltrums, and how they're going to uprise against them, and what the Viltrums are planning against Earth. We don't know. But that's how you do a second season. You just set some things up, but at the same time still stay on focus and give Mark the character development he needs to progress him to the next step in this journey on the show. But I guess the reason this show isn't as quite as good as the first season for me is just basically for the structure. There's still some plot points hanging. Nothing really didn't get solved, but I love what they do with Mark on this season. Nothing really didn't get solved, but I love what they did with Mark doing this season to progress him to the next level. Nothing really didn't get solved, but I still love what they did with Mark's journey during this season. I am fully on board with this show, and I can't wait to see what's in store for season 3. I'm going to give Invincible season 2 the hard eyes emoji.